Dear guests, partners, developers, and friends of the media from all over the world, welcome to the Virtual Vive Ecosystem Conference 2020, our 4th annual VEC event, this time fully executed in VR. My name is Ruben Gore from HTC's China team, and I'll be your MC today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us at this special event. I know many people are attending at a very early or late hours in your time zones, and we will do our best to make it worth your extra effort. This is a very difficult time for the world as a whole, and we must find new ways to face this challenge and eventually overcome it. It is currently impossible to hold large-scale conferences like this in the physical world these days. So we hope you find it useful that we are providing a forum for everyone to share and connect in the virtual world. The team at HTC has been working to deliver an experience that will be similar to what you would expect from a physical conference. And we've added some surprises we hope you'll enjoy that's not available in real-world events. We have a great lineup of amazing speakers and panels for the day that will both inform and entertain. There will also be opportunities for you to interact with some speakers in a QA session and with other attendees during the breaks and social times during the event. Do stay with us to the end and join us for the group audience photos as well as the lucky draw. Enjoy the conference and please share your experience and feedback with us and the XR community. And now, it is my great honor to welcome HTC's founder and chairwoman, Cher Wang, on stage to start off the Virtual Vive Ecosystem Conference 2020.
Dear friends and guests, good morning everyone. Welcome to the Virtual Vive Ecosystem Conference 2020. And thank you for joining us. In today's difficult times, I hope we can all take care of ourselves and our loved ones and stay healthy. The vision of HTC to enter the VR industry is to build a platform that merges technology with our humanity to unleash our imagination from the limitations of reality, so we can create our dreams together. VR holds the power to break through conventional thinking, as well as the barriers of time and space. The team at HTC Vive has constantly strived to help the world develop more efficient ways to work from home, learn from a distance, stay healthy, provide medical care, and much more. These innovations give us a sense of stability and purpose, even as the world continues to shift beneath us. The new coronavirus has greatly affected our lives. I'd like to sincerely invite global developers and friends to use your talents to transcend, innovate, and change ourselves, to develop apps and content that help us to live, work, and entertain, and to weather this storm. I believe that when everyone's wisdom, creativity, and humanity is united, we can find a brighter solution. With this pandemic, China has demonstrated extraordinary determination. If this world's 7 billion people stands together and tries to remove the borders in our minds, we can hope to build a boundless future. We can also face the most difficult challenges and create a better world for everyone. As society moves forward, we have overcome many obstacles. Medical experts, scientists, and institutions are trying hard to beat the virus. I'd like to express my appreciation and respect for the doctors and nurses on the front line for their unwavering dedication and sacrifice. We can learn from them to face difficulties with a good heart. I'm convinced that with the wisdom of all humankind, we can find a solution to this problem and those to come. Finally, I wish this event a great success and want to wish everyone health and happiness for the year ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cher, for your inspiring words. Now it is my pleasure to invite on stage HTC's CEO, Yves Maitre, to share his thoughts on the state of the industry.
Hello everybody. Wherever you are around the globe, I would like to thank you for being with us today. All HTC team members hope that you and your relatives are in good health, and we encourage all of you to take care of them. That's why we have decided to make this V2EC event a conference VR. This demonstrates how VR can bring people together. HTC is not only a premium hardware company, as many know us, but we are a virtual ecosystem company that supports and enables all layers of the virtual ecosystem. That's why you are so important to us. You are the center of the ecosystem, and under my leadership, I commit that HTC will continue to help and serve you better. Consequently, HTC will continue to invest at being the first true global ecosystem. Because at HTC we believe that the world should not be fragmented, but truly open. At Vive, we are building premium VR options for consumers and businesses, no matter where their journey begins. We believe in freedom of choice so that our customers can take advantage of an ecosystem that is flexible, open, and that grow with them over time. This is our core belief. As you all know, Vive brings to market some of the best HMDs in the world, but also the only fully open content store with Viveport. And additionally, we are actively investing in promising company for around the world through our ViveX accelerator. After being there for 6 months, it is clear to me that innovation is our driving force for the company. Innovation is our blood. And we'll continue to innovate towards 3 priorities. First priority, XR. Second, 5G and Edge. Finally, our Wave ecosystem. I already expressed myself in different medias regarding my perspective on the VR continuum and the 5G revolution. HTC will accelerate its investment on those new technologies. HTC is also uniquely positioned to develop hardware that can take advantage of the worldwide investment in 5G. Today, you know Vive as either a PC-based product or standalone. However, we are charging hard towards a world where we can deliver VR content over a 5G network without a PC. Coming from a career background, I know that HTC has the expertise to combine technology in a way that no other company in the world can provide. We'll combine XR and 5G in a way that opens new audience for our developers and also enables entirely new distribution stream for our carriers partner. I believe that everyone who participate in the event today will come away with a new appreciation for the potential of virtuality. We know intrinsically that VR is the early stage of XR, and XR is not only for gaming, but will be a core part of our work, our learning, our medicine for years to come. I know this event is the beginning of many such events that bring us together. Let's celebrate during this conference our three pillars: XR, 5G Edge, and ecosystem. Thanks for joining us and enjoy the conference. Goodbye. See you soon.
Wow, look at this. Check out where you're at. This is an amazing thing that we're able to put this together. Thank you all for joining us at the first virtual Vive Ecosystem Conference, the fourth actual Vive Ecosystem Conference ever. So, this is really the first time I think a long-term physical event has been transferred into a virtual world, and to do it fully, where all of you guys are here from around the world and can interact with each other and with all of the speakers. We have actually guests and speakers coming in from 50+ countries from around the world, 1,000+ people inside VR right now watching this event in dozens of rooms just like this, so that they can all get that VIP experience that you guys are having right now. So thank you, Cher and Yves, for that opening and for the welcome. And it's really important for us to remind ourselves right now we're in a very, very special time, a very difficult time for the world and for the industry. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll get some more sense of where we're going, and hopefully a little bit more hope and sense of well-being, because I think things are not as bad as they sound or as they seem, and it will only get better. So, we are actually in an important time where we need to go beyond borders, go beyond boundaries. Right now, it's not about a country versus another country. It's not about trade wars. It's really about how we work together as an entire world, as a globe, to really try to make this issue go away and improve our lives going forward. So, let's see what technology, what XR, what VR can do to help the situation. So, look at this. Look at this amazing environment. I really want to make sure I thank the Creative Labs team from HTC for making this possible, for making this amazing environment possible. I mean, there's just no way to have this kind of event in this kind of space in the real world, but we are doing it right now in VR. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you for all of the speakers that will be giving all of you an amazing talk today, that will be sharing their insights with you. Thank you to our sponsors who have made this possible because of their generosity. And also thank you to the Vive team that has spent months to put this event together. And lastly, I also wanted to thank the Engage team. Thank you, Dave and Chris and all of the folks there that has really supported us from a technical and a platform perspective to make this event possible. So I showed this photo, or the picture of this whale, because it was the picture I started with about 3 or 4 weeks ago at the Vive VR Educators Conference. And we've been planning this event to do a Vive Ecosystem Conference in VR for many months, but we weren't sure we could actually pull it off. But after joining that VR for Educators event and joining it inside the Engage system, I really had the confidence that the platforms are ready and we could actually deliver the type of experience that we are giving you today. So, in that conference, I said, VR has the ability to take every child on a field trip every day. Well, hopefully today, we're going to show you guys some interesting ways of delivering messages and take you guys on a field trip. There are other companies that talk about showing a whale coming out of a gymnasium. Well, why don't you look up right now? Look at that. How many whales do you see flying around in the sky? When you see that, you know we are in VR. So let's see what this rest of the presentation can bring for you. Now, these are pictures that you guys have seen for the last several weeks, maybe the last several months. for us, it's been the daily lives for the China team since essentially the middle of January. Everybody's been wearing masks. We've been living in a very different world, a different lifestyle. And I think because of that, we have maybe a little bit earlier appreciation for the types of changes this new lifestyle is going to do to society and to our daily life. This is something that I think is starting to hit a lot of the rest of the world, and we definitely like to share some of our ideas and insights that we've gotten from that experience. So these are pictures that you guys have probably seen way too many of, and you probably hope you never see them again. But what if you could see them in a different way? What if they come out in a 3D way that really lets you understand and appreciate them? But don't worry, guys. These viruses aren't going to hurt you because we prepared. All of you guys have been now issued special protective gear. So, this is a very interesting type of experience that we can have because of platforms like this. And this is actually going to be how the future of conferences are going to be done. Look at what's been happening, right? Events are being canceled. People are starting to work from home. Schools are being closed, so the kids have to be studying from home. This is starting to happen in the Western world over the last 3 weeks. But this is what's happening in China for the last 2 months. In fact, kids right now are still not back to school. They were supposed to go back in the beginning of February. They're still not back to school. And there's 200+ million students right now that will probably be out of working and learning and living from home from now until maybe the end of the school year, because just to make sure that this thing does not affect the children and the next generation. And because of that, it's actually changed the way that teaching is being done. Almost all kids right now, every kid right now, is using tele-learning, distance learning methods, and there's new tools being adopted. Same for schools. Same for work. Right now, for over a month, the entire Vive office was actually working remotely. We were all working through WeChat and Teams and other tools, and of course also through VR. Right? We are doing a massive experiment in China first, and now in the rest of the world, in terms of how to work remotely, working from home. This is going to be a new normal, and I really want to make sure that we understand the impact of these kind of changes. So going back earlier, I was talking about borders. So this is a picture of the 1918 flu and how it impacted the world. These are all the places that people did of that 33 million deaths. As you can see, there's really no borders. Every single country was impacted by that epidemic. It is by a lot of experts' predictions that this particular epidemic that we are suffering today will have wide-scale impact. Maybe not that many deaths, but in terms of reaching all of the world, all of the countries in the world, it is definitely something that is very possible. And, when you start to look at it from that perspective, we really need to think about how do we help each other? How do we work with each other? How do we continue to communicate with each other when we cannot be together physically? So I actually did a little bit of research on kind of the prior pandemics and what happened, and I've been reading a few books on it. This was a chart that originally came out I thought I would share with you guys. So, the bubonic plague, the Black Plague that everybody's very familiar with, that happened in the 1300s, that killed over 200 million people. Smallpox that really became rampant in the 1500s, that killed 50+ million people. And the Spanish, depending on who you ask, anywhere between 30 and 100 million people died because of the Spanish flu during the 1918-1919 period. Now, why did they spread? What happened? Essentially, at every one of these periods, there was a migration, a movement of people. Right? During the initial Black Plague, it was the Silk Road trade between the East and the West, and the movement of people between Europe and Asia and the Middle East, and bringing diseases that didn't exist in one area to the other. And as they mutated, they brought them back, and it created a lot of dangers that we had no immunity for. During the 1500s, the explorers that went to North and South America, essentially impacted and wiped out 80 to 90% of the local population because they were introducing new diseases that they had no immunity for. The World War I allowed soldiers to move, from places actually, even though it's called the Spanish flu, it actually started in the U.S. and it went to Europe because of the soldiers, because of World War I. What's happening now? What's having this drive for the coronavirus, the COVID-19, is because of travel, modern travel. And that's going to change because people are going to want to travel less. The week before, the outbreak started in China, and then a month later, what the flight traffic looks like. Essentially, 80% of the flights disappeared. And it will, even now, 2 months later, it is still going to be very, very similar. So, these kind of changes will take a long time. It's definitely going to impact certain industries like travel a lot. But, for the rest of us, it will impact our lives. I used to travel, probably 70% of my time. And now, having spent the last 2 months essentially in my home and nowhere else except, recently the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been going back to the office. But essentially, you go from the office and you go home, right? Or you just stay at home all the time because nothing's open. That gives you a different appreciation for what you need to do and how you need to be productive when you're not in the office, when you're not meeting people face-to-face. I've had one face-to-face meeting with a customer in the last 2 months. That is just crazy. But there's some side benefits. You feel like you have a lot more time on your hands than you used to. I've been reading more books than ever. I've been, getting familiar with hobbies that I haven't for a while, and actually got a little bit more fit. But we're definitely heading into a very challenging time for the world because, there's going to be different levels of reactions and to this virus and different levels of damage because of this virus. And, but we will get through it. But I want to let you guys know that even here at China, where we've started to come out of that trough, it's changed our minds. It's made us different. When people say we're starting to get back to normal, it means that we're actually getting back on the road and going to the office. But our lives have changed. Even when we're outside at the park, we put on a face mask. Everybody in the office, when they're sitting at their desk, they're wearing a face mask, right? It is going to change how close people want to get to each other. This is definitely a new normal that won't just be about China. It will be for the rest of the world. And we need to see how that new normal is going to change the way we work. When I said earlier, the migrations were what changed people for creating the prior epidemics, right? And it is the way to solve epidemics is to create distance between each other. Now, the one good news we have is that when we have physical distance with each other, VR actually can bring us closer together. Because in VR, no matter if we're thousands of miles apart, like all of us are right now, we can feel like we are in the same place. Right? That is a very special experience that isn't possible in any other medium. So to fight the epidemic, you create distance. To use VR, you remove distance. This is a very good balance. So what we're going to find is that there's going to be a migration the other way. Migrations created, physical, geographic migrations created the prior epidemics. But to solve these epidemics, I think people are now going to migrate in a different way. They're going to migrate into a virtual world. Right? This is what the future is going to look like, and it is going to change the way we live, the way we travel, the way we learn, the way we work. And there are some side benefits to that. So if you look at, this is a chart of the pollution levels, the nitrous dioxide in the entire China country about a week or a few weeks before the outbreak started, and then this is just a couple weeks ago in China. As you can see, the pollution has gone down. Right? So there actually may be some side benefits that because we're commuting less, because we're flying less, because we're traveling less, because we're maybe making less, manufacturing less. That's going to help solve the other issue that the country or the world is facing, which is the climate issues. Right? So maybe the two there might still be some silver lining to this particular crisis. Now, over the last 40, 50 years, the world has gone through a lot of technology cycles, and in every single cycle, we change what devices we interface with and how we interact with the world, right? The PCs, we gave ourselves the mouse and the keyboard. In the 90s, we had the internet that was created, and the link became the way we interacted and went around and found information. Mobile devices came in the 2000s and really became something that we are so dependent on today. In the mid, I guess 2015, 2016, VR started coming into the daily lives of a lot of people. And that's when spatial computing and the idea of going beyond a flat surface started to come out. And now in the beginning of this new decade, the 2020s, we're going to be going into the XR era, right? The era where AR, VR, MR, all these various XRs are going to become coming together and converging, right? We are going to find that we're going to be more dependent on these devices than anything we've ever had. And it will be a bigger part of our lives than any other technology we've ever interfaced with. But it is actually going to be difficult to adopt. I actually was hoping or expecting that in the post-2016, that VR would take off more, but it hasn't. And why is that? Because it changes the way we interact. It uses different interfaces than we've ever utilized before. But in a way, it's also a more natural interface than we've ever utilized before. Hand tracking, the fact that we can see our hands and use it and touch things in VR is something that we are born to do, but it's something that we are very unfamiliar with in the virtual world. Soon, eye tracking, voice tracking, those things that are in these movies right now are going to be our daily ways of how we interact. In fact, hand tracking and eye tracking, we will have lessons this afternoon from our developer team to teach other developers around the world how to utilize our various SDKs. Full body tracking and haptics, that is going to be something that, I'm wearing full body tracking right now, so you can see my legs and arms and body. I can do anything and feel, and the other people see it like I'm there, right? That's going to be how we interact with each other and give that natural feel, because your body language communicates even more so than what you say. And longer term, brain-computer interfaces, brain-machine interfaces is going to be very interesting. Wait, I just noticed something. Whoa, what was that? All right, well, I think you get the joke there. But we are definitely getting close to the Matrix, and it will become something like that when we start spending more and more time in VR. As I said, why has it taken so long for people to adopt it? Because we've been training ourselves for that 40 or 50 years on using these interfaces, using keyboards, mouse, and a touchscreen. Now, we want people to go, fully natural, something that has the benefit of letting people of any age be able to naturally use it without training, but then they also have to put something on their head. That changes people's user experience. It changes people's habits, and that takes time. But it also brings a lot of benefits. So you have our hand tracking SDK that we'll be training people on. The eye tracking SDK, we have full body tracking and haptics. This is B-Haptics, one of our ViveX companies. And then, being able to put the trackers on this particular gun is the same thing that's on my feet right now. And one of our other ViveX companies, Neurable, is doing brain-computer interfaces. Another technology that's going to be coming very soon is 5G. 5G is being deployed around the world, and it's going to enable something to happen. It's going to enable processing to happen off away from you physically, away from that physical device that is next to you. This is working at MWC last year. We worked with AMD, one of our sponsors, to do a real live out VR streaming where servers are away from this device. We use a 5G network, stream it to our 5G hub, and then using the 5G hub, streaming it to a standalone device, Focus Plus device, and playing a PC-based software. The benefit of this is that you no longer need to download. It's like going to a web page. You click on something and it runs. Whereas today, every app you have to download. It takes minutes, sometimes hours to download some larger apps, and you don't have that instant experience. Imagine if you had to make a call, and before you do that, you have to wait 10 minutes. How many calls would you be making, or how many web pages would you be going to? That is kind of the thing that we can remove by having a 5G cloud VR solution. So we've got some surprises later for you today related to carriers and 5G, so stay tuned for that. So how many people are familiar with this particular film clip? This is a clip that was taken in 1895, 220-something years ago. They made the movie screen. And this was what happened, right? They showed it to a crowd of people. And what was their reaction? Even though you see the quality of what's there, they felt like they were there, right? Now, just imagine what's possible today with VR. All right, so hope you guys enjoyed that. But I just wanted to show you guys something. I wanted to show you how immersive VR can be. All of you guys are, have a headset on. Maybe some of you are on a computer. But there's a lot of people right there that just ducked, that instant reflex, right? Because you felt like you were there. That is what VR lets you do. And it brings you into a new world in a way that gives you presence. That is not possible in any other medium. So we talked about the first screens that came to our life in the late 1800s, and it's been 100-something years. How has screens changed? We've been adding screens every single few decades into our life, from the TVs to the computers to phones to tablets, and then to the VR devices coming into our lives. Looking at this chart, you think, man, there's going to be a lot more screens coming into my life. I'm going to have 20, 30 screens. People used to talk about 3 screens, 4 screens. We have a lot of screens. But you know what? It's actually going to be the opposite, because over the next few decades, all those screens are going to disappear. They're going to be replaced by a device that's on your head, because that device can make any screen you need. And it's going to get cheaper. It's going to get more high fidelity. At some point, we're going to have glasses-like devices, and then we're going to have contacts-like devices. In fact, here at CES, I tried one of the contact devices, and it works. It's still early. It's still monochrome, but it works. And it's like pretty amazing, So keep your imagination open, because all the things that we've been seeing in sci-fi movies are going to be real. And at some point, all of those screens will go away, because we're just going to have a direct connection to the brain. But one of the things that, I hear a lot of people debating, right? They're going to say, okay, I hear you, immersive is going to be important, but what's more important? You have people like Mark Andreessen who says, VR is going to be 1,000 times more important than AR. And then you have other people, a lot of press, that's going the other way and saying, look, I can use AR on my phone. There's a lot more people using AR. That's the important thing. These two are having this virtual fight on a lot of the media. But I want to remind you that we don't need to, because these are actually not separate technologies. At some point, they will integrate. And you push a button, and it becomes translucent, or it becomes opaque, and you can travel between worlds, or you can see your existing world. That is the potential of the technology. You will not have 2 devices on your head to do this work, because the base technology behind the two is 80% the same, and they are all part of something called the virtuality continuum. So, I studied under Tom Furness about almost 30 years ago, 29 years ago, at the HIT lab, the first lab studying virtual reality, research in virtual reality in the U.S. And I thought that, there's a lot of people saying, what is, AR and VR and XR and MR and all these others? What is it? So I wanted to bring a world expert in this area to come and explain the virtuality continuum to all you guys. So please join me to welcome Tom, the Godfather of VR. Hey, Tom.
Hi, Alvin.
Hey, thanks again for joining us.
Should be a lot of fun.
I will leave it to you to explain this complex topic to everybody.
Okay, thanks so much. Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. I like being around Alvin any chance I get. And this is a wonderful gathering. And we're going to be doing this, I think, a lot more in the future. So Alvin has asked me to talk about this virtuality continuum. What is it all about? Well, we used to think it was sort of simple, but it has gotten more complicated, but we want to make it simple again. As Alvin mentioned, I've been working on in the VR space for many, many years, about 54 years now. And the first part of my career was working for the Department of Defense, U.S. Air Force. And actually, that's where virtuality came from. We were trying to solve problems in fighter airplanes. And here you see me, Lieutenant Furness, wearing the very first helmet-mounted display on the bottom left, and on the upper right, the first tracking system. We put these two together to form really the first virtual reality systems. And this was many, many years ago. But what we discovered in the process is this whole idea of virtuality. And here you see in this photo something that's real and something that's sort of not real. So which is reality? Now, in this case, of course, the mountains, the upward mountains are the real image, and the downward mountains, which are reflections in the water, are actually virtual mountains. But here they coexist with each other. Now, we can also ask this question with modern technology. For example, here's a head-up display in one of the fighter cockpits I worked on. And so you see through the display the outside world, but what is this, what basically is this symbology doing there? It's also there, superimposed over the real world, but it is a virtual image. It is computer generated. So this brings the question, well, what is real and what is virtual, and how these two mix together? So several years ago, Paul Milgram came up with this idea of a continuum. And let me try to explain this continuum. Let's start with this line that goes from what we call reality all the way to virtuality. And let's see what happens along this. So at one end we have reality, and that is where we're interacting with atoms. Atoms are the physical things that we interact with day by day. Now, we go at the other extreme, and we have everything is virtual. Nothing is real, but it appears to be real and appears to be in space. And so that's where we're dealing mainly with bits of information that appear to be atoms. But in between, we have this other space. We call it MR, or mixed reality space. Sort of more toward the reality side, we have what is called augmented reality. This is where we're taking real-world things and adding to those real-world things virtual information, some bits. But then we sort of progress along this continuum, and we have something else we call augmented virtuality. This is where we actually have virtual worlds, but we're adding real-world things into it. So if you look at this continuum, it goes all the way from reality through these augmented, either reality or virtuality, to complete immersive virtual reality. Okay, let's get some examples of this. This is physical reality. When you're out surfing, you're interacting with the atoms. Or let's say that you're hang gliding. You'll have the ability to feel the wind in your face. You'll see the real world as you're floating around. Now, when we talk about augmented reality, there's several kinds of augmented reality. There's what we call a video-based augmented reality, where let's say you're taking your cell phone out and you're pointing it at a scene. And you see that scene, but you also see other computer-generated information on top of it. You remember Pokemon Go? That's what really the Pokemon Go was about. Here we have one of the projects done in my lab in New Zealand where we're pointing the camera and the phone toward a building that was destroyed in the earthquake. But when we look at it on the phone, it actually has been restored to what it looked like originally. That is what we call video-based augmented reality. Now let's look at another example. This is augmented reality, which is see-through. So it's like that head-up display. You see the real world out there, and then you're superimposing graphics on top of it. So here we're looking into the sky, and we can have a virtual meteor shower happen in the sky, which is all computer-generated, but it appears to be in the sky. We can also, for all those constellations, put their representations in terms of the animals and the people that the ancient used to use to describe these constellations. This is what we call see-through augmented reality. Then we have another, along the continuum, another thing we call augmented virtuality. And augmented virtuality is where we actually have virtual scenes or virtual information bits, but we're actually putting real things, real atoms sort of into it. In this case, we see a website which actually is populated by a person which is pointing around in the website and showing you where to go. And this person's in real time. You can interact with this person, and yet you see the website at the same time. Another example of augmented virtuality is this scene where you're in a virtual world, a virtual planet, but you're importing into that virtual planet real objects, like this wolf in the snow. So you see both of them together. And then, of course, finally, we have the full virtuality, immersive VR. This is where you see, hear, touch, taste, smell, things that are not there, but appear to be there through information bits. And here we see a person, an avatar that represents a real person, dipping her finger into a virtual stream. And we can be there and do the same thing, too, and interact with that person. As a matter of fact, today, that's what we're doing. We're all in this world together. It is full immersive virtuality. Okay, so that explains a little bit about the spectrum. But let me show you an interesting thing. You can start mixing these things together. For example, here's a project I'm currently doing in my laboratory at the University of Washington. What we're trying to do is learn how to communicate with a living species, with an octopus. Now, the octopus is probably the most demanding creature we can interact with. If we were going to interact with aliens, an octopus would come close to be able to do that. So what we've done here is we have a real octopus on the right. This octopus name, her name is Gaia. And in the middle, we have a virtual octopus that we created, taking into account the behavior of normal octopuses. And then we actually inhabit this virtual octopus that we call Eleanor with ourselves. So we're looking through Eleanor's eyes. We're actually moving her arms as we move our arms and hands and fingers. And the whole object here is to be able to communicate with Gaia, the real octopus. Now, the real octopus sees us as basically on a screen with parallax, so it appears to be 3D. We're looking through Gaia's eyes at the real image of Gaia, or looking through Eleanor's eyes at Gaia. And so we have this mixture of sort of all of these realities at one time. So that becomes complicated. What do you call it then? Okay, well, let's look at some other ways, some other complicating things. A few years ago, around the 1998, 99, we created what we call video-based augmented reality with AR Toolworks and AR Toolkit. And here you see a little girl holding up a card. It's a tangible card marker, and on that card is this black square. Only she's wearing a head-mounted display that's basically has a TV camera in the center. And as she holds up this card, we actually use computer vision to track this card relative to the headset. And so what she sees is the outside world through this TV camera, but when she looks at the card, she sees this three-dimensional object pasted on top of it. And as she moves the card around, that object stays with it. Now, this is what we call, again, video-based augmented reality. But what it does is give us what we call a magic book technology. Now, what I mean by the magic book, let's say that everyone's familiar with real books. That is physical reality. So let's say that you're reading a book about Cinderella and a castle. And so you're reading this book and you say, wow, this is really cool. But then you put on your headset, and when you do that, you have what is called augmented reality, video-based augmented reality. So as you're looking at the book, Cinderella's castle pops out of the book. So now you can look around to hold the book and move it around in different angles and look at Cinderella's castle. And you actually look through the window and you say, wow, there's some people inside. I want to go there. So what you do is you flip a switch, and guess what happens? You now go from augmented reality into the castle, into the virtual world. You're completely immersed in that. And so we've gone all the way from reality to augmented reality to virtuality. But there's one missing, and that is what we call augmented virtuality. So what happens is, here you see Cinderella's castle. You're immersed in that, but you meet me. I'm standing at the door, and I'm in real time. I'm a real person, but I'm in your augmented reality or virtual reality world. So here we have blended all of them through a spectrum. Now, it's interesting that in the early days, 1971 and earlier, as I was working on these head-mounted displays and tracking systems, we actually built this whole system, this concept, in 1971. Here you see what we call the Model 7A head-mounted display. It is a parabolic visor on which we project images from miniature cathode ray tubes. And what we do is change the transmission of the visor. So as we turn the visor dark, you have a virtual world. As we open up the visor so you can see through it, we have what is called augmented reality world. So it is changed all by what we see and how we can see through the visor or not see through the visor. And depending upon what we're trying to do, we can change the kind of images that you see. And we're certainly tracking these in three-dimensional space, as you see with the trackers on the side of the helmet. This is in 1971, and we were actually flying this in fighter airplanes. Now, what does this all mean? Well, it's confusing, isn't it? So it turns out our whole idea of the spectrum really is going to go away, because we're trying to work toward devices that do the whole thing. And here you see, for example, the new Vive Cosmos, which does it all. And oh, by the way, those helmets that I built early on cost about $1 million each. This now is much less than that and becoming more and more affordable. So here we've gone first full circle. After 54 years, we're back again to one universal, wonderful device. Thank you very much. Hope this helped explain the virtuality continuum. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, Tom. That was amazing that you can join us from exactly the other opposite side of the world. Right? So the last slide that Tom had is essentially that he wants to have a device that can do it all. Right? And that is what HTC is trying to offer. You know, we have we were the first to come out with a 6 degrees of freedom, full 6 degrees of freedom on one device. We were the first to provide eye tracking directly integrated into a professional VR device. And we were the first to introduce an expandable VR XR device that allows you to add functionality without adding and changing the platform. You know, HTC has been innovating in VR since essentially 2015, when we came out with the first 6 DOF devices that allowed for full room scale and allow you to see both your hands and your head and be able to move around in a large space. Before that, it wasn't possible. And that's what I know brought a lot of you guys into the industry. And we really appreciate the support that you've been giving us over the last several years. So a few months ago, we introduced the Cosmos series. And now we're actually adding more functionalities, because now you actually do have one device that can give you the ability to go across the entire ecosystem, the entire virtuality continuum. And you have one device that's expandable, it's great visuals, it's wireless, so you can actually not have something dangle behind you. And you can select whether you want lighthouse-based laser tracking or you want optical-based, machine learning or machine vision tracking. And of course, you can always go back to reality by just flipping it up. So this is a very similar picture to what Tom just showed you a little bit ago. And everything from going from base reality all the way to the virtual reality or virtuality. And we have a device that really allows you to meet all of those areas depending on how much of the virtuality you would like to be able to get access to. And if you ever want to go back to the real world, it's pretty darn easy. So in a few years, we're going to have our children learning physics this way, where they can have, Einstein in front of them, at least virtually, and feeling like they are in the new world. And they can turn their existing physical space, scan it, and produce a different environment so they can learn and experience things without leaving their home. That is what this technology is doing. We already are offering this SRWorks technology that does the scanning. In fact, here's a little demo that we put out, I think almost 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more, with our existing Vive Pro that allowed us to already do VR, AR in the same device. As you can see, you actually had occlusion of that board. You had the ability to sense the location of that fish where he used his hands to hit it, right? That technology is something that we actually have enabled from devices that we've had from day one. You can see this is a Vive Pro where the gentleman's looking at his hands. He's then able to, be in his office, see his, physical space, but then have a virtual object that he's interacting with and feel like, he's able to change and alter that environment.
It's going to be a little bit off because
now, going back to something that we're hearing a lot about, here's a researcher, a virologist from the University of San Francisco who is using the MR capabilities of our Vive Pro to teach people about the SARS virus and about the coronavirus. Right? This is something that was just released a few days ago. It's helping somebody understand something that is quite complex. Now, beyond just doing fun things, we also need to go back to work, right? And Vive has provided and developed something called Vive Sync.
Collaborative meeting application
So I wanted
that
to
allows
let
remote
David
teams to
tell
work
you what
together
that's
in a
all
shared
about.
space. So in Sync, we really wanted to focus on having a meaningful presence of our users. We do that in a number of ways. One is through our Avatar Creator app, where you can simply take a picture of yourself and it creates a 3D version of yourself. Two, we do it through our full body tracking. So when you're walking around or talking, we have full body presence and your body language is actually being communicated. And three, we actually track your eyes and lips. So when you're talking and looking around, people actually see where you're looking and your mouth matches.
Vive Cosmos XR has high-quality, low-latency pass-through cameras built into the XR faceplate. It allows a near-complete pass-through field of view that utilizes the majority of the VR display to blend real-world and virtual content.
For Sync, we can now have design reviews in the same location and then allow remote participants to still join us in our same environment. And if we ever want to switch to VR, we simply just open up a portal, step through, and then we can be fully enveloped by the content.
That is going to be the future of how people work. In fact, that's a tool that our office used when we were working with each other to plan this event. So I think a few weeks ago, I had posted a picture of our team working in VR using the Sync to plan out the virtual Vive reality and Vive ecosystem conference. So here's a friend of mine, Tony from Italy. He's actually now being quarantined in Italy like everybody else over there. And he sent me a couple of videos I thought you guys would like to see. What can you do when you have the ability to blend the virtual world with the real world? You might actually have a new commerce model. You might see something on your screen and then be able to pull it out because you can sense what's physical and what's virtual, and then be able to have that 3D depth. Now, he said he's been staring out this window for the last couple of weeks and he's getting very bored, so he wanted to see something different. And this is what he did. You put on a headset, you scan the environment around you, and you can make that scene into anything you want it to be. So now you could be looking into space, you could be looking into a park, right? We could all have ocean shore views or park views, whereas whenever you're looking at it today, you don't have to be stuck with that. Right? That actually changes our relationship with our home space. So I just have one piece of good news for everybody. Today, the Vive Cosmos Elite is actually available for shipping. So I know a lot of people have been waiting for a high-quality VR laser track device so that they can play some new games that are coming out. But today, you can start getting them. Anybody that pre-ordered, you should be getting them in the mail very soon. And if you haven't, this may be a good time to go and start visiting your retail stores or your online stores. And for all of the million-plus Vive CE or Vive 1.0 users, we have a special product that's made just for you. All you need is the headset, right? Because you already have some of the best tracking base stations and wands out there, the controllers. All you need is to purchase a Vive Cosmos HMD only and be able to enjoy the next generation, next level of fidelity. That is shipping starting April, and depending on different countries, we're going to have different times of arrival. But we want to make sure that everybody knows that's an option that is coming. So thank you for being the early adopters for the original Vive. Now you have a new experience that you can experience using half of the setup that you already have. So let me share another piece of good news with everybody.
I'm here. So what's the plan?
If we can get this weapon, what we're doing here could change things forever.
There's no straight shot to the vault. I'm gonna head inside, find a way out. Got it.
I'm with you every step of the way.
You're gonna need a gun! Don't worry, it's unloaded. It's unloaded now!
Combine chatter's really picking up. They know you're coming. You need to get out of here, now. Oh, God.
They've got Dad.
They're gonna find out what he knows, and then they're gonna kill him.
All this is my fault. I never told you. I couldn't. I'm so sorry, baby.
You will not save him. Alex Vance alone cannot prevent his fate.
Close your eyes, honey!
If you actually bought a Vive Cosmos Elite, you will be getting a free copy of Half-Life Alyx. This is available in everywhere except China due to approval reasons with the local region. But we'll definitely make sure that even the Chinese users and customers will make sure you get another benefit that will be as good. So Half-Life Alyx really represents a new generation of gaming, a new immersive quality that has never been seen before. And we're hoping that this also inspires other developers to be able to create even more, even better, more immersive and longer content that will bring people in. Right? This is the future of gaming is really a VR experience. Okay, I know a lot of you guys know Vive for its hardware, but I also want to emphasize we also have one of the best content platforms out there with the Viveport. We've been running it since 2016 and have thousands of titles on it, and we're also the only platform, the only VR platform that has a subscription service, all you can eat for one fixed price. And the best part is it is a completely open platform, so you can support any of the devices that are shown below. And that means that you develop one time, and then it works everywhere. Right? So I think that's something that a lot of developers out there, you guys would appreciate. And I also want to introduce you to ViveWave. A lot of you are already our partners in developing these products and these software, but ViveWave is our open standalone platform development kit and runtime, and that allows you to developed one time for one standalone, and then they also, again, runs on all of those devices. And we already have 6 or 7 different vendors that we're working with already. And today I wanted to add one more, which is the 3 glasses product that have just recently launched. And I know some of you probably have seen the Vive Proton that we announced about a month ago, or showed off as a reveal for a future concept. And I want you to know that if you are developing on Vive Wave, it will work on that future product. So there is always, long-term use for anything you're developing. So we really welcome you to learn the Vive Wave development platform, which again is one of the sessions that will be taught in the afternoon today. So please do make that part of your schedule. Now, one of the questions I get asked more than any other when I do interviews with the press is this question: what is the killer app for VR, right? And unfortunately, I don't think that is the right question. And there isn't a single killer app for VR. And I think what we've experienced over the last few weeks is actually proving that more so than ever. In fact, rather than trying to create a killer app, I think what we need is actually XR's Life app. It is an app that we will want to use every day, right? Not something that we use once, not something that we use for a few weeks and then get bored of. And what is that? It is the ability to have the freedom to live your life. It's the ability to work, to learn, to travel, to play when you cannot leave your home. I think that actually now changes the equation for VR. It used to be VR is a nice-to-have product, but now it will soon become a must-have product. Why? Because it gives you back your freedom so you can work from home. It gives you back your freedom so you can learn from a distance and be able to access the best teachers in the world and travel to places in VR that you can't do physically. And we don't have to talk about play. I mean, that's something that everybody already expects. In fact, a friend of mine, Jake, did this last year. He spent an entire 7 days in VR, 24/7, doing everything that you would in the real world while in a VR device. I don't recommend this, but it's doable.
I'm going to be eating, sleeping, working, and playing in virtual reality.
And that to me is what VR is. Connection.
Thanks for putting out a headset that allowed me to survive 168 hours in VR. I look forward to seeing the future innovations y'all put out.
So as you can see, he actually survived and he enjoyed it, and he used a lot of different platforms and played a lot of content, both gaming and non-gaming, to pass that time. A lot of you guys were going to be spending a lot of time indoors, and this might be a good way for you to actually get fitter. In fact, I use some of these apps myself, and when you're at home and you can't go to the gym anymore, and you can't go play tennis or golf or whatever you normally do, then VR is a way for you to stay fit while staying entertained. In fact, I have to tell you, I can report that I've lost 7 pounds in the last month and a half being quarantined in my home. So it is possible to actually lose weight without going out. Now, I also want to share the other part, and it's about learning. VR allows you to learn and be educated better. This is what the future classrooms are going to look like. Unfortunately, these are all ones that are, they're together, but you could have the exact same experience even if you weren't. Even if you have what's the situation today of people being far away, they can still experience that teacher-student relationship. In fact, the student-to-student relationship, as we are right now today. in VR. In fact, with 5G, together with a standalone device, very soon, you'll have that very low latency experience that allows you to get teaching from anywhere. In fact, that classroom on the right, their teacher is not in front of them. Their teacher is 1,000 miles away from one of the best public schools in the country. You're teaching to one of the poorest parts of the world, poor parts of China, using VR, so they can share knowledge and share talent that is very rare today, which are good educators. We have this class in the U.S. that is also taken VR as their primary medium to supplement their education. Here's what we expect education will look like in the very near future for young people. Connect to a 5G device. Scan your room, turn every part of your room into whatever screen you want. Kids will want to play games and entertain, of course. They can turn their room into a dungeon, bring in monsters and goblins.
Hey bud, don't forget your school field trip.
But as you can see, they don't have to leave the real world behind. By clicking a few buttons, they can now join the rest of their class on a VR field trip.
All right, class, let's visit the tomb.
Field trips are usually the funnest part of every class. But now they can do this every day, and they can do things that adults can't do. To go into an ancient tomb and explore it as if you were there. So that is the future of education. Now, educating isn't just about kids. We're going to have to train and retrain a lot of people in the world going forward. One, because of jobs that are going to be displaced in the service and travel and other sectors because of what's happening with the virus today. And then also another hundreds of millions that will be displaced because of automation that's coming in the near future. We're going to need to teach people, adults, how to do new jobs, find them new ways to contribute to society. Whether you're a pilot, or in this case, actually, Mr. Charlie Fink, one of our moderators for a panel today, he's learning how to drive a forklift for a warehouse. We have some of our McLaren Edition devices here being used in the largest driver training course or school in the world. They graduate over 200,000 drivers, and every one of them are using VR to train so that they can deal with situations that you cannot see in the real world. And of course, we have Rolls-Royce using it for their engine design and manufacturing. Now, beyond just training, just our daily work. These are actual pictures that I have experienced myself personally using VR to do. The left, I was telling you about, we use VR to do our planning for this meeting. A few weeks ago or a month ago, I used VR to present to educators that were across the world. I used VR to do an interview with a reporter that was also across the world. And one of our other panelists today from NVIDIA, they have this product called the holodeck that allows engineers to work together in high fidelity, real designs that are being designed for production. That level of quality and interacting with anybody around the world to do the design changes and the reviews. So I wanted to also share another good news with you guys. I know you spent the last hour or so in the Engage platform. I hope you enjoyed it. We've really enjoyed working with the Engage team. So I wanted to share the good news is that going forward, HTC Vive will be an official distributor for the Engage platform. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. You and your team are great. And in the China region, we will be the exclusive distributor and reseller. So if you guys are interested in having an event like what you're experiencing today, engage, and HTC is part of the solution you guys should definitely consider. So as you can see, HTC has put together a very full support system for the ecosystem. Just the things I talked about, the hardware side, the Vive port. We also actually have a Vive Arts program that has helped dozens, actually, of galleries and museums take their content into VR. We have a Vive Originals program that actually helps create original 3D and 360 videos. We have a Vive LAN program that helps the offline entertainment industry, the location-based entertainment for VR to happen. Vive Studios, which has published dozens of high-quality content. Our ViveX program that has invested over 100 startups around the world that is helping make VR viable, right? Helping them when they need it most. And then earlier, Vive Wave, our platform, our software, our system to help standalone devices of any kind all have one compatible development system and be able to provide the best performance possible. So I want to end on our original topic, having a boundless future. We all right now still identify ourselves as being, citizens of a certain nation, citizens of a certain city, right? But we really need to take those boundaries out of our minds. We need to think about we are all citizens of the earth. We are all part of the human race, and we need to help work together to solve the real problems facing our society and using technology to help us do that. Now, VR is definitely one of the technologies. XR is going to help make that happen. I think you've seen some really good examples. And in fact, with every single crisis, there's usually benefits that come out of it. I think there will definitely be some additional benefits to solving our climate problem because of people's reduction in travels and reduction in commuting. But in addition to that, because of challenges, it also creates a lot of new opportunities for companies to come in. In fact, if you look at the crisis of the 2000s, you had companies that really became big in China. Baidu and Alibaba and Tencent all really started to thrive after the 2000 downturn, as well as actually Amazon and Google and those companies. And if you look at what happened after 2003 SARS in China, it actually helped companies like Alibaba and Jingdong to become massive giants in the e-commerce space and create what is now probably the most efficient logistics system for e-commerce delivery and sales. I think right now you are seeing a lot of companies who are doing video conferencing and so forth that are doing well. Companies like Talk or Zoom in the West. But what we really need to look at is what's going to happen long term. What happens after this? The next 5 years, 10 years. I think all of you will play a huge role in making that new reality happen and bringing this better world and bringing this boundless world where we're no longer separating ourselves because of geographic borders and being able to connect and make friends around the world. So thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day here at the Virtual Vive Ecosystem Conference.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at the Vive Ecosystem Conference, and a personal thank you to my dear friend Alvin for the invitation and for the work that he and HTC are doing to reinvent education. I named this talk "The Future is Faster Than You Think," which is my latest book, and really it's about education for the 21st century. My bias is that we are living during the most extraordinary time ever in human history. This is a time when each of us have access to more computational power, capital, knowledge than any time ever in human history, more than the heads of nations had just a couple of decades ago. The challenge is that none of us truly understand how fast the world is changing. And the reason for that is that our brains, the 100 billion neurons in our brains, 100 trillion synaptic connections, evolved for a different world. They evolved for a world 100,000 years ago, 1 million years ago. Back then, on the savannas of Africa, nothing changed generation to generation, century to century, even millennium to millennium, things were pretty much the same. But today, the world is very different. Today, the world is global and exponential. Something happens in the US or China, you know about it seconds later. Your computer's about it microseconds later. Things are not changing century to century or decade to decade. They're not even changing year to year. They're changing month to month. And if I were to graph that, it looks like this, right? This red line is all of us. It's our board members, it's our families, our students, our politicians, it's all of humanity. We have not had a hardware or a software upgrade in some 2 million years since the prefrontal cortex came into existence. But, you know, the technology that we're here talking about, computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, augmented virtual reality, blockchain, those technologies are doubling in power on an 18 to 24 month cycle. And the difference between us linear thinking humans and this exponential growth in technology is either disruptive stress or disruptive opportunity, depending on your point of view. So let's dive into this a little bit more. We talk about exponentials. What is exponential even mean? What does it feel like? You know, I have two 8.5-year-old boys that I'm excited are becoming really enabled in the virtual world. And they're linear thinkers. We all are linear thinkers, right? In 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I am 30 meters away, right? But in 30 exponential steps, like our computation is progressing, in 30 exponential steps, I'm not 30 meters away, I am 1 billion meters away. You know, double something 30 times, it's 1 billion times greater. Put differently, I've gone around the planet 26 times in the period of that 30 exponential growth. So there are many examples of how fast the world can change. One of my favorite ones is something I wrote about in my second book called Bold, and it's the story of Kodak. Most of us remember Kodak from our vacations, and in 1996, Kodak was at the top of its game, a $28 billion company, 140,000 employees. What most people don't know is that 20 years earlier, in Kodak's labs, a gentleman by the name of Stephen Sasson had come up with the digital camera. And that year, in 1975-76, he brought it into the boardroom and says, here it is, the future of Kodak. It takes 0.01 megapixel images in black and white on a tape drive. And of course, Kodak made a mistake. They didn't realize the potential of this. And they didn't jump on that exponential bandwagon. And a few decades later, Kodak was bankrupt, put out of business by the very technology that they had the first mover advantage on, that they had the patents on, but they thought of themselves being the paper and chemicals business rather than in the preservation of people's memories, which is what George Eastman, the founder of Kodak, had done. And this is one of the mistakes we all make, is what business are you truly in? And as we think about education, we're in the business of educating people the most efficient way, the most compelling way, and it's not just a Socratic sage on the stage. In the same year that Kodak went bankrupt, another company called Instagram was acquired by Facebook for $1 billion, but they only had 13 employees. And so this is what it looks like. People laughed at Facebook paying $1 billion for Instagram, but it's now worth $100 billion on Facebook's balance sheet, in that that's what you get when you are riding on top of an exponential growth curve. This is another advantage looking at this. That yellow line is basically film photography falling off a cliff at the same time that we see digital photography exploding onto the scene. I bet you there's a similar graph when we look at people going to libraries or people doing Google searches, right? It is a difference in the new paradigm. So what's driving all of this, and what I spend a lot of my time focusing on, is that faster, cheaper computers are the foundation upon which we're building things. It is ultimately more and more, faster and faster, more and more ubiquitous, cheaper and cheaper is going on. And on top of this computational power we're seeing really revolution in technologies like sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, VR, AR, synthetic biology, and blockchain. And it used to be that as an entrepreneur, any one of these would be sufficient for you to start your company. But today, truly, it is the convergence of 2, 3, or 4 of these technologies that is changing the game, that is changing business models. And ultimately, it's the convergence as enabling me to be here with you, using VR, using high-speed data networks, using computational power and memory and sensors. All of these things are enabling this type of new form of education. And so I, myself, and my venture fund, I have a $250 million venture fund called Bold Capital, we're always looking for where are we seeing converging technologies reinvent industries. So one of the challenges in education is that the speed at which our world is changing is so fast, and we are not changing our educational system to go along with that. Our educational system, as I'll show you in a few minutes, are centuries old. And so how fast is the world truly changing? And let me give you an example that is fun. Every year, I do an event called Abundance 360 for about 400 CEOs in Beverly Hills, and I'm on stage for 3 days, and we're talking about really what are the technologies people need to know about right now that are what's happened in the last 12 months. And so for context, what I do is I look back a century, what happened 100 years ago. So let me share with you what happened 100 years ago in the year 1920 in the United States. How fast was innovation back then? And we looked at all of the records, the Patent and Trademark Office, 100 years ago in the United States, the total number of true, I will call it technology innovations we found was 4. In the entire year 1920, we found 4 innovations. Let me share what those are, because they're pretty amazing in how simple they are. The first was in the year 1920, we saw the first commercial radio station come online. This is in Pittsburgh. It was broadcasting the results of the presidential election. So that was the first innovation in the year 1920. The second innovation, and I kid you not, was the creation of the handheld hairdryer. You can't make this stuff up. The third innovation was the Band-Aid, came out from Johnson & Johnson. And the fourth innovation for the entire year of 1920 was the 3-lens traffic light. So I want you to think about those are the 4 innovations for the entire year of 1920. I would imagine there are these level of innovations that occur every second, here in the year 2020. So we talk about education meeting our needs. Let's take a look at the length of the human lifespan. The human lifespan in the year 1000 was somewhere on the average between 30 to 35. At birth, that was your life expectancy. In the year 1800, it extended a little bit to the year, to 35 to 40. Today, the life expectancy is roughly 75 to 80. A lot of the work I do with my companies and my investments are on extending the healthy lifespan. I think we'll get it very quickly to 100, maybe 120, and then breakthroughs may make it even more indefinite. But if you look at our educational system, right, our first universities came on in the year roughly 1000, and then by the 1800s in Europe, there was 143 universities. Today, there's about 25,000 universities. India, US, China are the top 3. And here's the point. it used to be that you would go to university, you'd get 4 years of education, and those 4 years of education had to last you, in the year 1000 AD or 1800, had to last you, from age 22 to age 35 or 40. It had to last you 18 years before, on the average, you died. And of course, things didn't change very fast in the 1800s or 100 years ago. Today, tech is changing everything day to day. And so education cannot be a one and done anymore. It needs to be a continuous process. Rather than going to university or to high school, it needs to be a subscription. It needs to be a way of living, that we are educating ourselves constantly, all the time. So what's another meta trend going on right now is that we're about to connect the world. Obviously, the work that's going on through Huawei and through Qualcomm and others, we're about to deploy 5G across the globe. In addition to 5G, we have an explosion of satellite networks. We've got Starlink from SpaceX planning on the order of 12,000 to 42,000 satellites. OneWeb is planning 2,000 satellites. Kuiper from Jeff Bezos is launching 3,000 satellites. Apple announced their own satellite network, and that's just in the U.S. Of course, there are a number of satellite networks that are being planned out of Asia and the rest of the world. And so what that means is we used to have half the world connected. Back in the year 2018, about 3.8 billion people, and now we're going in the next 5 years to 8 billion people being connected, which means we're about to add an additional 4.2 billion minds into the global conversation, right? 4.2 billion new entrepreneurs, new people who need and have access to education. So what are these 4 billion minds going to create, discover, consume, desire, invent? And so I think about this, and I think about the need and the ability we have using converging exponential technologies to reinvent what we're doing. So how do we reinvent it? This is one example. I am actually physically at the Xprize in Culver City right now. The Xprize runs large-scale global competitions. And we ran a competition last year, well, actually over the last 5 years. It was awarded last year. We put up a $15 million purse that was funded by Elon Musk. It was also funded by Tony Robbins, the Voss family, Scott Hassan, a few others. And we asked teams, can you build a piece of Android software that can take a child in the middle of no place who is completely illiterate? So we went into Tanzania, not downtown, but the outskirts, where there was no electricity, no nothing. And we identified 2,500 students who had no language, no writing, reading, or math. We did pre-testing. We got 700 teams entered this competition and developed software to be deployed on a tablet. And then we gave the tablet with the finalist software to the children, and we studied before, during, and after. And it turned out that 1 hour of tablet use for the winning software was the equivalent of that child being in full-time school. And those children learned on their own without any adults, without any schools. And that's just one example. Clearly, the more powerful example is coming here before us with the use of virtual reality and augmented reality. And it's about the convergence of these technologies. So I'll just give you my favorite example of what I think the future of education is going to be. First of all, again, it is not something you do, between ages 5 and 18 or 5 and 22. It is a lifelong experience. And I imagine that if I want to learn, I'm Greek by origin. My parents grew up on a small island of Lesbos. But I can imagine if I want to go and learn about Plato, in the future, rather than reading a book, that is, boring me, or listening to a lecture that's boring me, I'm going to put on my headset and we'll get to a point where the resolution to the visual cortex is on the order of what my eyes can give me, but I put on my headset, all of a sudden I'm in ancient Greece. And when I want to read about or learn about Plato, I look over there, and there's a guy in a white toga on a piece of marble. And I walk over to that person who is, little bubble over his head says, it's Plato, and I introduce myself. And that version of Plato is a AI-driven avatar where every piece of knowledge about Plato from every expert on the planet has been uploaded so that that avatar speaks like, in my case, will be speaking in English. Perhaps he might be speaking in Mandarin or Greek, whomever the recipient is. But that avatar is responding to me and my questions in a way that is consistent with every piece of writing and every expert ever. And I can say, hey, Plato, pleasure to meet you. Can you show me around? What do you have for breakfast this morning? What are you working on? What are you writing about? I could spend the day with Plato and learn everything I need in an extraordinary experience that is compelling. And so I think education becomes fun. It's the convergence not only of sensors, networks, AI, VR, AR, depending on the experience, but also the convergence of education and gameplay. So we are living during the most extraordinary time ever. The organizations I work with, Abundance 360 is my CEO summit, and that Alvin has spoken at a number of times, and I keep on inviting him back. Singularity U, based in Silicon Valley, and in the Xprize, based in Los Angeles. So there you have it, my quick thoughts. I'm so excited about reinventing education and partnering with everyone here to do that. So thank you.